then came out of the most awful-looking beasts ever to find her way to Hollywood, with her mother. I left him there with his guests. I couldn't stand to have my aesthetic sense so upset by two such human sub-monsters in the female form, a form which I worship, as did Jack. Afterwards, he cursed me. "You left me there," he accused. "You left me there. You could have at least got rid of the mother." "I thought you would be safer with the mother." John and I were talking about the horrors of being found at the corner of Hollywood and Vine with your hat in your hand. What if you slipped so bad you fell into beggary, like many stars? I said, "Why don't we find out how it would be?" "A hell of a good idea," said Jack. We made a small wager to see how far we could get as bums. The bet was either $50 or $100 to see who could pick up the most money in an hour. Jack's makeup was better than mine. I put on a set of false whiskers, a hat which went down over my face, and a pair of dark glasses, and I carried a stick so I could simulate a blind man. Jack wore a horribly dirty sweater with holes in it. He played his part as if he was cold and needed clothes, and he simulated a man with palsy. I took up a stance at a Hollywood intersection where an old woman sold papers. She had been there for years, and I forgot that this was her beat. I shuffled along with my toes sticking out of my shoes. I had picked up a few copies of the news, and I went into competition with her at the corner. She knew all the cops and got the cops to kick me out. They asked me for a license, asked what I was doing there, and told me to be on my way. I recollected my own experience in New Guinea and knew very well people would fight and sometimes kill each other for 3 dimes or even 3 cents. Jack had also figured on selling papers, but he abandoned that idea and played straight blind man. No cop bothered him, and in an hour he picked up $1.40. I was unable to get to Jack to talk about himself as an actor, as he had been the greatest Hamlet of them all, so it was said, and I could believe it. I wanted to get him to talk about it. How did he feel about Hamlet, Shakespeare, the play, so that he had been inspired to do his kind of performance with this vehicle? I couldn't get him to open up. I discovered that, with all his extroversions, he was innately modest, certainly insofar as his achievements were concerned. He could talk about Renaissance art, the wicked life of Father Barnaby, 150 different subjects. He talked shop frequently. He came back home one evening early, full of excitement. He was going to be tested for The Man Who Came to Dinner. "I think I can do it," he said. "Certainly you can. But what the hell are they going to give you a test for?" I was infuriated that they were to test him for the role. I realized later that Warner's wanted to know whether he was on the bottle, whether he was physically and emotionally capable. I protested loudly about the idea of testing John, but the studio probably knew its business. I knew from personal experience that he could play the role of Sheridan Whiteside in The Man Who Came to Dinner. Sometimes, during those 3 weeks after he came to see me just for a drink and a night's lodging, I wondered if he was ever going to leave or whether my house would be standing after he went. In some ways, he was a ruthless man, with mercy towards none. Another evening, he rushed in with an idea. Same enthusiasm. "Wonderful," he said. "Tremendous. This takes place in 1380. He discussed the parts, the clothes, the role he and I would have. Everything. "You see," he said, "you play my bastard son." He was sitting on the edge of a table. "Mine is a very small role," he said, of course. "Balls!" I screamed at him. "You, a small role? Never fear. I shall steal the picture anyway." "Tell me more," I said. "I have no more to tell. I just thought this much of it on the way up in the cab." Jack was very down in the spirit. He was in physical pain, yet his outer expression was literally lofty. You asked him, "How goes it this noon, Jack?" "Never had a better day, boy," he would answer. I knew then that he was suffering from cirrhosis of the liver, kidney trouble, hardening of the arteries, and other things. Somehow, the 3 weeks passed and Jack left. I could work again, but it was the opportunity to see Jack in those declining days that made it possible for me, 15 years later, to play as authentically as I could the role of Barrymore in Too Much, Too Soon. Freddie McAvoy didn't know how to box, but he was about twice as strong as any man I knew, including me. He had a grip of Australian steel. My only chance in a row with him was to hit him on the nose, which pictorially looked strong and aquiline. Actually, his nose couldn't take it. Quite unexpectedly, between his nose and my current ambition to do some writing, I discovered how much he had my interest at heart. I had just read Tom de Quincey's Confessions of an Opium Eater. I was so impressed with it that I decided I must go through the same thing, subject myself to opium, write about it. I asked a friend if he could get me some opium. He said, "My plane carries a lot of that junk." He came up with enough to dope half a studio. I started to take it. Then I tried to write. At first, I think I did pretty well. I didn't know my face was growing grayer and grayer by the day. Others noticed my change of complexion. The more I experimented, that's what I called it, the less I wrote. I began to wonder how De Quincey had done it. What I wrote made no sense at all. Maybe this was because I tried to write while taking the stuff. Others wrote afterwards. I didn't tell Freddie about this. I kept the supply of opium cigarettes on a windowsill over the bathroom sink. Each day I worked at the studio, each evening home for a cigarette of opium. One night I came home, reached into my cache for the daily dose, and found nothing. I scrabbled around frantically, wondering if I had, in some stupor, misplaced it. Freddie opened the door. "What are you looking for?" "Oh, nothing." "You stupid son of a bitch, have you seen yourself lately?" "What are you talking about?" "If you want to know where the dope is, I'll show you." He led me into the study, where there was a big fire going in the fireplace. "There they are. Now, what are you going to make of that?" "You bastard, you're a guest in my house. Do you mean to say—" "Sure, I burned them, all of them." I let fly. He caught one right on the nose. I knew just where to tab him. We rolled and rolled around my study. The furniture began to crack up. We almost fell into the fireplace. "You son of a bitch," I said. "Come on outside. I'm not going to soil my place with your blood." He went outside. There it was, a little better. He could come and try to grab me, and I would try to knock him down. If he had got his hands around me, he would have finished me, but I was faster. Finally, we were both lying on the ground, mutually knocked out. He was panting. "I'm not going to get up again," he said. "Why should I be knocked down by you? If you're stupid enough to go on with this, nobody can stop you." Freddie snapped me out of it, the hard way, and I dropped the opium before it became a habit. I withdrew in the next few days. I did have something to write about. Withdrawal symptoms. These are horrible and worth writing about. You feel that every single nerve in your body is popping out. There's nothing very new or scientific in pointing that out. Subsequently, I have taken a narcotic now and then, but only on a doctor's advice, administration, or prescription. The only real thing that came of it was my realization of what a good friend Freddie really was. Freddie and I began underwater spearfishing and skin diving in America at a time when we knew of no others who were. Swim fins were unknown. We had no underwater guns such as they have now. Goggles were still in primitive stage. Freddie and I went to Mexico and Florida. We chased sharks underwater, fishing as a team. We had a signal system between us so that we could help each other go for a fish with a spear. Once I put a spear in a hammerhead shark, and Freddie put a spear in the same fellow. He just towed us along. Another time at Acapulco, we were underwater. Freddie signaled and pointed in a certain direction. I ran headlong into a giant devilfish, or manta ray. Over me, this great white expanse of belly and a big gaping mouth. I went backwards fast as I could. When I came up, there was Freddie by the beach, laughing his head off. I took a poke at him. Boyish stuff, I know, but there was a rough outdoors-ishness to this, a crude humor, a rugged something that you couldn't get from association with women. Deep diving has always been a specialty of mine. The first time I did it was in New Guinea, using a pair of crude Japanese goggles made of shell or bamboo, with a piece of glass in it. Then the face mask was invented, and Freddie and I rapidly took to this. Instead of the primitive spear, which went through a piece of bamboo and pulled back almost like firing a bow and arrow, the French came out with a wonderful spring gun. Freddie and I went off to Mexico and other parts of the world to fish underwater with this new invention. We had ordered this gun from France, and I feel pretty sure we were the first on the coast to use it. Oddly enough, the imaginative Hollywood directors and producers who knew very well I spent so much time underwater never designed a picture for me to play such a role on the screen. Others, who didn't even know how to swim, got the undersea stories. I wanted to appear in a film where I might be slugging it out with an octopus or a shark, or experience the rhapsody of the deep. But this wasn't for me in films, only in real life. Skin diving took us to Mexico from time to time, chiefly to Acapulco Bay, where the waters are beautiful, the air exhilarating. On one of these haunts, I met someone, and as a result of that meeting, there has been, since then, more than one international headline. In a Mexico City bar, as McAvoy, myself, and several others sat having a few drinks, we were joined by a beautiful young girl with reddish-brown hair, opaque cat-like eyes, a wide, shapely mouth, and a figure that might have been sculpted. Her name, she said, was Linda Welter. She was a demure. She spoke English with just a little trace of accent, and her Spanish was perfect. She was Dutch and something else, perhaps German. We were going to Acapulco, we told her. She exclaimed with delight how she had always wanted to go there. It occurred to me later that she probably knew the place better than any of us. Half jokingly, I said, "Why don't you come with us? We're going fishing." "Oh, wonderful. When do we leave?" Freddie, across the table, threw up his hands with a sort of "here we go again" look. The following day, the three of us flew down in one of those ancient little planes to the miserable airport of Acapulco. We put up at a small hotel where they had little bungalows. Linda was an excellent companion, a good sport, although she didn't go for underwater fishing, saying there were too many tiburon there. She couldn't think of the English name for shark. She had never been to the States, she said, and that was her next ambition. She wanted a means of getting there, and I was it. It actually occurred to me she might have a chance in films, and I was glad to be helpful. When we returned to Mexico City, she was under contract to me, a 6-month contract, which was to be at a starting salary of $100 a week and expenses. I returned to Hollywood, and she was to follow. On the day she arrived, Big Bud Ernst chanced also to be coming in from Mexico City. He rushed to my house at once and reported that on the plane he had met a beautiful young girl with reddish-brown hair, big cat-like eyes, and her figure was so and so. I should meet her. He was all excitement. At that instant, Linda walked in. Bud's jaw dropped as she came over to me. Now came the business of arranging my protégé's future. I thought she was singularly attractive, but she had one long dog tooth on the left side of her mouth which wouldn't photograph well. I sent her to my dentist, Dr. Bill Wallace, and told him to edge off the protruding part of the fang and make it level with the rest of her teeth. A little later, or was it weeks later, Dr. Wallace got me on the phone. When was I going to pay him, he asked. The bill was running a little late. What bill? I haven't had any bill from you. Linda's teeth. What the hell are you talking about? I just asked you to knock off the edge of one tooth, just to file it down. What's so expensive about that? Yes, but I've got a bill here for $900. $900? She could get a new head for that. That's just about what she's done. She had had all of her teeth recapped and had apparently told the doctor to send the bill somewhere else so that I wouldn't see it while the work was going on. $900 was a lot of money in those days. In addition, I got bills from Bullock's, Wiltshire, and other purveyors of feminine merchandise. Where was this going to end? Meantime, Bud Ernst, McAvoy, Johnny Myers, Barrymore, Decker, and myself had a few conferences as to what her screen name should be. I hadn't yet got around to making a screen test of her, but it was due in time, and in the interim, the name Linda Welter didn't seem like good movie fare. One evening, we kicked around possible names. The talk grew heated. Each had a different idea of what would sound well, yet she was my protege. It was on the strength of my contract that she had got a passport to enter the States. I had always liked the name of Fortune. I jumped to my feet, pounded the table. I've got it. Linda Fortune. Jack Barrymore let out a hoarse bellow of a laugh. Navarre, sometimes you frighten me with your blinding brilliance. He laughed again. Yes, my boy, I can see it now. Linda Fortune. Either you have a twisted sense of humor, or, as I say, you're beyond brilliance. How are you going to introduce her? I thought for a minute, and I saw what he was getting at. Yes, his eyes lit up as he said, Miss Fortune. I had been associated with various publicity gimmicks with Fletcher Christian of Mutiny on the Bounty. I hit upon another name, Linda Christian.